Rights in Child Nutrition Programs, Introduction. Key Area 4. Communications and Marketing. USDA Professional Standards 4000. Communications and Marketing. Hours of Instruction 1. Please scroll down to read the disclaimer or click the play button in the top right to listen to the audio version before moving on to the next slide. Course Overview. Welcome to the Civil Rights in Child Nutrition Programs. Training is required annually for anyone implementing or overseeing a United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, Food and Nutrition Service, FNS, program. Here at the Institute of Child Nutrition, we are happy that you chose us for your professional development needs. This course contains 4 lessons that review various civil rights topics to ensure compliance and enforcement of the Prohibition Against Discrimination in all USDA, FNS nutrition programs. Good luck and happy learning. USDA Professional Standards and Key Areas. This training provides 1 hour of training credit, but please note that the professional standards requirements only apply to school nutrition professionals. The professional standard is Communications and Marketing, 4000, more specifically, the Learning Objective 4130, which is to empower school nutrition professionals to provide excellent customer service. Key Area 4. Communications and Marketing. Course Requirements. There are no prerequisites for this course. Lessons must be done in order, but you can work at your own pace. You will receive a certificate upon completion of the course. At the end of the course, you will be given instructions for printing the certificate. If you are required to complete this course by your school district, be sure to submit a copy of your certificate to your manager or director. Course Objectives. By the end of this course, you should be able to complete the following objectives. Identify the civil rights legislation for program authorities. Define discrimination. Identify the areas by which discrimination is prohibited for all USDA programs. Outline the discrimination complaint processes. Summarize the purpose of a public notification system. Distinguish the elements of public notification. Outline the requirements of civil rights training. Paraphrase data collection and reporting requirements for racial or ethnic data. Summarize the specifics of meaningful access for individuals with limited English proficiency, LEP, and/or disabilities. Categorize the types of compliance reviews. Distinguish customer service best practices. Determine the tools and steps for successful conflict resolution. Course Resources. In addition to the online information and activities in the lessons, there are some handouts you may want to access to support your learning or for future reference. One option for accessing the handouts is to download them before you start the lessons. The screen below demonstrates where you can locate the handouts. Scroll to see the rest of the picture. Your course name, and additional resources. Course Resources continued. Another option for accessing the handouts is to click on the drop-down Resources tab when it appears on a slide with handouts. To see how to access resources on a mobile device, click here. There are some terms which will be used throughout this course that may be unfamiliar. Please take a moment and refer to the Civil Rights Terms and Definitions handout. Conclusion. Congratulations! By enrolling in this course, you have made an important decision to invest your valuable time and learn more about civil rights in child nutrition programs. Before we get started on the lessons, follow the instructions given below to access the pre-quiz. 1. Click on the X icon in the top right corner to close this lesson. 2. To access the post-quiz, click Next Lesson in the top right corner or locate the table of contents and click on the respective post-quiz. If you are on a mobile device, click here. Welcome to Lesson 1. Civil Rights Coverage, Legal Authorities, Discrimination, and Complaints. Lesson Overview. This lesson will focus on civil rights, USDA's FNS program authorities, and discrimination. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to complete the following objectives. Identify civil rights authorities and civil rights authorities. Define discrimination. Identify the areas by which discrimination is prohibited for all child nutrition programs. Describe the discrimination complaint processes. What are civil rights laws? Civil rights. The term civil rights refers to the protections for people who apply and/or participate in FNS programs or receives federal financial assistance from FNS. The first of these rights were codified in Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, with later laws expanding coverage. Federal dollars fund food and nutrition programs across the United States, with USDA serving as a pass-through agency. These monies are drawn from taxpayers nationwide, and as a result, all program operations must be conducted in a non-discriminatory manner. Legislation. The majority of civil rights legislation stems from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is a landmark act prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in any programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 states, "No person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. The majority of the legislation mentioned in this lesson will be referenced from the Code of Federal Regulations, which is more commonly known as the CFR. So before detailing any more of the applicable civil rights laws and amendments, let's look at where they can be accessed and what the citations you will see mean. The National Archives and Records Administration's Office of the Federal Register and the Government Publishing Office work together to provide the public with a codification, or organized list, of the general and permanent rules of the federal government. The list is published in the Federal Register, both in hard copy and electronically, by the executive departments and agencies of the federal government. It is divided into 50 titles that represent the broad areas that are subject to federal regulation. Each title is then divided into chapters, usually bearing the name of the issuing agency, which is then subdivided into parts that cover specific regulatory areas. The larger parts may even be subdivided into subparts. All parts are organized in sections, and most citations to the CFR refer to material at the section level. Structure of CFR citation. Let's look at an example to get a better understanding of a citation. Title 7, Part 210, Section 30, Subpart A. The number to the left of CFR is the title. So in our example, 7, which is agriculture. Next, you have CFR. Remember this stands for Code of Federal Regulations. Then the numbers before the period, which is the part. In our example, this is 210, which is the National School Lunch Program. The next part of the citation is the section. It is the number to the right of the period. In our example, the 30. Finally, you have the subpart, which is a letter, like the A in our example, which references the general regulation regarding school nutrition program professional standards. The letter is used to indicate the entire subpart, not just an individual section. More legislation. In 1987, the Civil Rights Restoration Act clarified that all recipients of federal funds had to comply with civil rights laws in all areas, not just the program or activity receiving the funds. Later legislation was passed to address specific areas of discrimination. Click on the circles to learn more. Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987. Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987, Public Law 100-259, clarifies the intent of Congress as it relates to the scope of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the Age Discrimination Act of 1975, to ensure non-discrimination in all programs and activities of the recipient, whether those programs and activities are federally funded or not. Sex. Title 9 of the Education Amendments of 1972 and 7 CFR 15A prohibit discrimination from any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance based on sex. Disability. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and 7 CFR 15B prohibit discrimination based on disability within any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. The Age Discrimination Act of 1975, 7 CFR 15C, prohibits discrimination based on age in programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. National origin. Executive Order 13166, improving access to services for persons with limited English proficiency. The executive order requires federal agencies to examine the services they provide, identify any need for services to those with limited English proficiency, LEP, and develop and implement a system to provide those services, so LEP persons can have meaningful access to them. The executive order also requires that the federal agencies work to ensure that recipients of federal financial assistance provide meaningful access to their LEP applicants and beneficiaries. The USDA LEP guidance, not policy guidance, titled USDA Guidance to Federal Financial Assistance Recipients regarding the Title VI prohibition against national origin discrimination affecting persons with limited English proficiency, requires recipients of federal financial assistance to take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to the USDA programs and activities which they administer, to ensure that they do not discriminate on the basis of national origin. Religion. 7 CFR 16 is the overarching regulation for religious organizations to participate in USDA assistance programs. The executive order sets forth USDA policy regarding equal opportunity for religious organizations to participate in USDA federal financial assistance programs for which other private organizations are eligible, so long as any portion of the recipient's programs or activities are federally assisted. Legal authority. In 7 CFR 15, USDA is given authority to develop civil rights requirements prohibiting discrimination in all federally assisted programs or activities. This legislation also applies to FNS, which administers child nutrition programs within USDA. FNS provides specific guidance in FNS, Instruction 113-1 and Appendix B, for all child nutrition programs and activities, fully or partially funded by USDA, FNS. The USDA's implementing regulations for Title VI, Section 504, Title IX and the Age Act, are at 7 CFR 15. Child nutrition programs must abide by these regulations. Discrimination. All of the legislation previously mentioned was enacted due to legal, political, and social inequalities in the U.S. that resulted in discrimination. Discrimination is a difference in treatment, either intentional or by neglect, that makes the distinction of one person or group of persons from others based on a protected class. Discrimination prohibited. Although many believe that discrimination only occurs in work-related situations, it is applicable in any instance where equal access is not offered or provided. Federal civil rights law and U.S. Department of Justice regulations prohibit anyone participating in or administering USDA programs from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, age, sex, including gender identity, and sexual orientation, disability, retaliation/reprisal for prior civil rights activity. The 4 Ds of discrimination. There are 4 Ds to remember when evaluating discrimination against an individual or group because of their protected class. An individual or group receives delayed benefits or services, is denied benefits or services, receives different treatment than others that is to their disadvantage and/or receives disparate impact or effects occurs when a recipient uses a neutral procedure or practice that has a disproportionate, adverse impact on a protected class and lacks a substantial legitimate justification, for such procedure or practice. In a disparate impact case, the focus of the investigation concerns the consequences of the recipient's practices, rather than the recipient's intent. Receives disparate treatment or intentional discrimination occurs when similarly situated persons are treated differently because of a protected class. To prove intentional discrimination, one must show that a challenged action was motivated by intent to discriminate. Examples of discrimination interactive. Consider these 3 examples. Select yes if you think that the statement would be discrimination. Select no if you think the statement is not discrimination. Correct. Refusing an applicant's enrollment based on disability is discrimination. Correct. Failure to provide reasonable modifications to an individual with a disability is discrimination. Correct. Selectively distributing applications to only one nationality or socioeconomic group is discrimination. Unlawful discrimination. Discriminating decisions are made each day, such as whether to speak to a passerby, or if you will wear a red or blue shirt. These decisions and actions become unlawful when the adverse act is tied to a protected class. Unlawful discrimination, in any form, is strictly prohibited, regardless if a program is fully or partially federally funded or, in the case of a disability under the ADA, prohibited by state and local governments, Title II of the ADA, and by public accommodations, Title III of the ADA. Examples. Consider these examples of unlawful discrimination. Serving boys larger portions of food than girls. Failing to provide meal modifications to students with disabilities. Failing to provide program information in a language that parents, guardians, and children can understand. Civil rights complaints. A civil right complaint is a statement that contains the complainant's name and address and describes an agency's alleged discriminatory action in sufficient detail to inform the USDA Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, OASCR, of the nature and date of an alleged civil rights violation. Statements can be written, verbal, or anonymous complaints. All child nutrition programs are required to have a process in place for handling all civil rights complaints. The CNPs not authorized to process complaints must forward them to USDA. Programs must forward complaints to the FNS Civil Rights Division, in accordance with the timeframes established in FNS Instruction 113-1, and the FNS State Agency Complaints Processing MOU, if in place. Forward complaints based on race, color, national origin, sex, including gender identify and sexual orientation, and disability, to CRD within 5 calendar days of receipt. Forward complaints based on age, or a combination of age and other bases, to CRD within 5 business days of receipt. State agencies or subrecipient agencies may develop their own complaint forms, but the use of such forms cannot be a prerequisite for acceptance. For state-specific processes and procedures, please refer to your state agency or program sponsor. Complaints. A person alleging discrimination has the right to file their complaint within 180 days of the alleged action. Only the Secretary of Agriculture or their designee can waive this requirement for good cause. Complaints must be received and accepted whether written, verbal, or anonymous. Confidentiality is extremely important and must be maintained. The complaint does not need to be written or signed if it is submitted in an alternate format to accommodate the complaint filing needs of a person who has an LEP, a disability, or other special need. USDA, DR 4330-003. All civil rights complaints must be documented and maintained in a log. The log can be written or electronic, must be kept separate from any program complaints log, and must be accessible only to authorized personnel, to ensure confidentiality and compliance with Privacy Act requirements. For more details on how to file a program discrimination complaint, visit this website, www.usda.gov/OASCR/program-discrimination-complaint-filing. Conclusion. This lesson covered the major civil rights legislation, the USDA and FNS legal authorities, and details on discrimination. You should now be able to identify the civil rights legislation and civil rights authorities. Define discrimination. Identify the areas by which discrimination is prohibited for all child nutrition programs. Outline the discrimination complaint process. Welcome to Lesson 2. Public notification, civil rights training, data collection, language access, and disability access. Lesson overview. This lesson will focus on public notification, the civil rights training requirements, data collection, meaningful access, and accommodations. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to complete the following objectives. Summarize the purpose of a public notification system. Describe the elements of public notification. Outline the requirements of civil rights training. Discuss data collection and reporting requirements. Summarize the specifics of meaningful access for those with limited English proficiency. Summarize the specifics of reasonable modifications for those with disabilities. Public notification. According to FNS Instruction 113-1, all FNS programs must include a public notification system to inform applicants, participants, and potentially eligible persons of the following: program availability, program rights and responsibilities, the policy of non-discrimination, the procedure for filing a complaint. Elements of public notification. Click on each box to learn more about each topic. You cannot proceed in the training until you have reviewed each topic. Program availability. Program availability is to inform applicants, participants, and potentially eligible persons of their program rights and responsibilities, in addition to the steps necessary for participation. Click the X to continue. Complaint information. Complaint information must advise applicants and participants at the service delivery point of their right to file a complaint, how to file a complaint, and the complaint procedures. All program materials, media, or sources, paper and electronic media, that publicize a USDA-funded FNS program must include the appropriate non-discrimination statement. Methods of public notification. Program information should be distributed using mass media, which includes the Internet, newspaper, radio, TV announcements, letters, brochures, and bulletins. Notification systems include prominently displaying the Injustice for All poster, conveying the message of equal opportunity in all photos and other graphics, making program information available to the public upon request, informing potentially eligible persons, applicants, participants, and grassroots organizations of programs or changes in programs, and providing appropriate information in alternative formats for persons with disabilities and in the appropriate languages for persons with limited English proficiency. Non-discrimination statement. All program materials or media, including paper and electronic media, publicizing a USDA-funded nutrition program must include the non-discrimination statement in its entirety. Electronic media includes websites and digital applications. Although not required on every page of a site, the full non-discrimination statement or a link to the full statement must be included on the home page. There is a short version of the statement that can only be used in special circumstances. The English version reads, "This institution is an equal opportunity provider." The Spanish translation reads,
Esta institución es un proveedor que ofrece igualdad de oportunidades.
In addition, there are over 55 non-English translations of the full non-discrimination statement available online on the FNS public website. Full USDA non-discrimination statement. In accordance with federal civil rights law and U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, civil rights regulations and policies, this institution is prohibited from discriminating on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, disability, age, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity. Program information may be made available in languages other than English. Persons with disabilities who require alternative means of communication to obtain program information, for example, Braille, large print, audio tape, American Sign Language, should contact the responsible state or local agency that administers the program, or USDA's Target Center, at 202-720-2600, voice in TTY, or contact USDA through the Federal Relay Service at 800-877-8339. To file a program discrimination complaint, a complainant should complete a Form AD-3027, USDA Program Discrimination Complaint Form, which can be obtained online at https://www.usda.gov/site/default/files/documents/AD-3027.pdf from any USDA office by calling 866-632-9992 or by writing a letter addressed to USDA. The letter must contain the complainant's name, address, telephone number, and a written description of the alleged discriminatory action in sufficient detail to inform the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, ASCR, about the nature and date of an alleged civil rights violation. The completed AD-3027 form or letter must be submitted to USDA by 1. Mail. U.S. Department of Agriculture. Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights. 1400 Independence Avenue, Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20250-9410, or 2. Fax. 833-256-1665 or 202-690-7442, or 3. Email. program.intake@usda.gov. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. And Justice for All poster. The Injustice for All poster is a tool to help communicate the services and benefits of your program without discrimination. In any establishment where services and benefits are delivered, it must be prominently displayed where everyone can view it. The AJFA poster is to inform the public about applicable USDA non-discrimination statutes and policies, and how to file a civil rights complaint with the USDA. This includes any meal service sites, schools, daycare, and adult care centers. Family daycare homes are not required to display the poster. In a school's cafeteria, the poster must be displayed in an area where everyone can view it, not behind the serving line. There are 3 versions of the poster, but the green one, a D-475A, is the current and most recent version that should be used in offices, schools, and other sites that administer child nutrition (CN) programs, supplemental nutrition and safety (SNAS) programs, and special nutrition programs. To obtain copies of the posters for display, contact the state agency or program sponsor in your state. To review copies for reference, visit the USDA FNS website. Annual training. Training is required so that individuals involved in all levels of administration of programs that receive federal financial assistance understand federal laws, regulations, instructions, policies, and other guidance. Training on civil rights must be completed annually by anyone involved in any aspect of the USDA nutrition programs. It must be documented to verify completion. Both full-time and part-time employees, whether staff, volunteers, or contractors, at all levels must take the training before doing any duties related to the program. This includes, but is not limited to, staff that interact with applicants, participants, and/or their parents or guardians or caretakers. Individuals who make eligibility determinations or who collect and manage data. Kitchen staff, cooks, servers, cashiers. District and school-level staff who have program duties, superintendents, principals, volunteers. Anyone who supervises meals or takes meal counts. Not all examples in this training will apply to everyone who takes it. If there are specific situations related to program compliance with civil rights, refer to your state agency or program sponsor. Training topics. All staff should receive annual training on all aspects of civil rights compliance, including, but not limited to, collection and use of data, complaint procedures, compliance review techniques, conflict resolution, customer service, effective public notification system, resolution of noncompliance, requirements for language assistance for people with LEP, Reasonable modifications and auxiliary aids and services for people with disabilities. Race and ethnicity data collection. USDA, FNS, requires the collection and maintenance of characteristic data. It is used for several purposes including to determine how effectively the programs are reaching potentially eligible persons and beneficiaries, to identify areas where additional outreach is needed, to assist in the selection of locations for compliance reviews, and to complete reports, as required. Race and ethnicity data collection. A process should be in place to collect data at the point of application. Preferred methods are based on self-identification and self-reporting. The purpose of the data collection should be explained to encourage participants to self-identify. In addition, they should be assured that although the information is required, it is used for statistical purposes only and does not affect eligibility criteria. If an applicant does not consent to self-identification, state agencies and program operators may not collect racial or ethnic data simply by looking at the participants. Instead, a best practice such as obtaining the information from parents, guardians, or adult participants should be used. It is important to remember that children must not be surveyed. Once collected, data is retained on file at the service delivery site for 3 years, with access limited to authorized personnel. Race and ethnic data. The data is collected for 2 categories, ethnicity and race. For ethnicity, there should only be 2 choices to indicate if the applicant is or is not Hispanic or Latino. 1. Hispanic or Latino. Or 2. Not Hispanic or Latino. For race, data should be collected for these 5 categories. 1. American Indian or Alaska Native. 2. Asian. 3. Black or African American. 4. Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. 5. White. Physical accessibility. Any federal child nutrition (CN) program that is fully or partially funded through federal dollars must be accessible to and usable by persons with disabilities. This includes, but is not limited to, persons with vision and/or hearing impairments. Participants must have full physical access to the buildings and parts of buildings that house these programs. If for some reason access is not available, the CN program must offer the most integrated setting possible that will allow participants with disabilities to fully benefit from the programs. If structural changes must be made to a building, a transition plan should be developed that will allow continued access to program accessibility. Access accommodations may include, but are not limited to, moving to accessible buildings, assigning aides to assist participants, making home visits, delivering services at alternative accessible sites. This applies to sites with 15 or fewer employees, altering existing facilities, and constructing new, accessible facilities. Language access. Many people who live in the United States are either unable or have very limited ability to speak, read, write, or understand English because of their national origin. Individuals who do not speak English as their primary language, and who have a limited ability to read, speak, write, or understand English are identified as LEP. Civil rights legislation and other previously mentioned guidance require recipients of federal financial assistance to take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to programs and services for participants with LEP. Failure to provide meaningful access to persons with LEP could be discrimination on the basis of national origin. LEP factors to consider. To ensure compliance with providing meaningful access, there are a number of factors to consider. The number or proportion of LEP people eligible to be served or likely to be encountered by the program. Frequency with which people with LEP come in contact with the program. Nature and importance of the program, activity, or service provided by the program. Resources available and their costs. LEP and program access. Meaningful program access is provided for participants with LEP in several ways. Conduct assessments to determine language profile for their state, considering regional differences, and updating as appropriate. Translate vital documents and online information. Post multilingual notices of free interpretation services. Utilize qualified and competent interpreters and translators. Train frontline staff regarding how to provide LEP populations with meaningful access. LEP and program access continued. For language services, applicants and participants cannot be asked to bring their own interpreters. Permit use of family and friends, if appropriate, only after offering free language assistance. Be aware. Issues of confidentiality, privacy, competency, or conflict of interest may also arise. If the CNP determines the family or friend is not capable of interpreting, the CNP must utilize a qualified interpreter instead. Children should not be used as interpreters unless there is an extreme emergency, and no preferable qualified interpreters are available. Use qualified, competent language resources. Examples include qualified, competent bilingual staff, telephone interpreter lines, oral interpretation services, written language services, and qualified, competent community organizations and volunteers. Language assistance services. CN programs are required to provide all program materials to potentially eligible persons, applicants, program participants, and the public in languages other than English, as appropriate. For more specific guidance in this area, contact your state agency or sponsoring program. Lesson overview. This lesson covered collection and meaningful access for people with LEP and physical access for people with disabilities. You should now be able to summarize the purpose of a public notification system, describe the elements of public notification, outline the requirements of civil rights training, discuss data collection and reporting requirements for racial or ethnic data, summarize the specifics of meaningful access for individuals with limited English proficiency, LEP, and an equal opportunity to participate, and equally effective communication for individuals with disabilities. Welcome to Lesson 3. Compliance Reviews, Customer Service, and Conflict Resolution. Lesson Overview. This lesson will focus on compliance reviews, best practices in customer service, and tools and steps for successful conflict resolution. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to complete the following objectives. Categorize the types of compliance reviews. Distinguish customer service best practices. Determine the tools and steps for successful conflict resolution. Compliance reviews. Compliance reviews are performed to examine the activities of state agencies, subrecipients, and local sites to determine civil rights compliance. USDA, FNS civil rights and program staff review state agencies. State agencies review their subrecipients, and subrecipients review their local agencies. All significant findings must be provided in writing to the reviewed entity and to USDA, FNS. There are 3 types of compliance reviews. 1. Pre-award. 2. Routine, post-award. And 3. Special. Click on each of the boxes to learn more about each type of review. Pre-award compliance reviews verify that all levels of program administration, state agencies to local sites, are in compliance with civil rights requirements prior to approval for federal financial assistance. USDA, FNS and state agencies must conduct routine post-award compliance reviews to assess all civil rights compliance areas. Special compliance reviews occur for various reasons and may be scheduled or unscheduled. They may be conducted to follow up on previous findings of non-compliance or to investigate reports of non-compliance by other agencies, media, or grassroots organizations. Special compliance reviews also may be specific to an incident or policy. If there is a history of statistical underrepresentation of a particular group or groups or a pattern of complaints of discrimination, a special compliance review may be conducted. Non-compliance. Non-compliance is a factual finding that any civil rights requirement, as provided by regulations, instructions, policies or state agency, local agency or other subrecipient guidelines has not been met. All instances of non-compliance are considered equal, no minor or major categories. As a result, all findings of non-compliance must be reported. The level where the noncompliance occurred, state agency, subrecipient agency, or local site, must take immediate steps to obtain voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance must be achieved within 60 days from the finding's effective date, which is the date of notice to the reviewed entity. Customer service. Providing quality customer service is key to meeting the needs of your customers, who include applicants, participants, and the public. Customer service is effectively communicating with your customers, responding to their needs, valuing their worth, and instilling excellence through courtesy, confidence, and enthusiasm. Customer service best practices. Although there are no hard, set rules for customer service, there are best practices that everyone should follow. For a program to be successful, it is essential to apply these consistently and equitably. Doing so saves you time and minimizes opportunities for complaints and angry customers. To ensure you provide excellent customer service, consider these best practices. Treat customers with respect and dignity. Exercise good listening skills by being attentive to the customer and their needs. Learn to empathize with the customer, when necessary. Respond to questions in a non-threatening manner, ensuring your voice and tone are calm and clear. Communicate rules, rights, and responsibilities clearly and precisely in a language and format that the customer can understand. Recognize and appreciate that customers have many needs and few resources. Recognize changes in a customer's demeanor, because it often signals the person feels they have been treated in a rude, discourteous, or unfair manner. Professionalism. As a professional, you must respond in a professional manner regardless of the customer's behavior. No matter what happens, try these techniques. Avoid interrupting them. Be patient and give the customer the opportunity to explain the issue. On average, most people take 3 minutes to voice a concern. Each time you interrupt them, those 3 minutes start over. Be understanding. Of all the situations you encounter, angry customers require the most empathy. Put yourself in their shoes and don't be judgmental. Talk calmly and slowly in a well-modulated voice with low pitch. This should help to relax the customer and allow you to address the facts, not cater to the emotions of the situation. Apologize. Even if the problem is neither the program's nor your fault, apologize to the customer for the inconvenience. Besides, you truly are sorry you have to deal with the situation. Identify the problem based on the information the customer gives you. Then, determine a solution. Depending on the specifics of the conversation and your knowledge of the situation, it may involve you contacting the customer at a later date. Personally follow up to make sure the customer has been satisfied and the issue is resolved. Things to avoid in customer service. In addition to best practices, there are some strategies to avoid in order to provide excellent customer service. Quickly or unnecessarily passing off a complainant to a coworker. Actively listen to the customer and try to assist with their concern or issue. Only pass them on to someone else when you have exhausted all available resources. Totally ignoring a complainant and or letting the complainant talk themselves out of the situation. Placing a complainant caller on hold or leaving them in a waiting room without providing useful updates. Providing the excuse, "Sorry, it's not my job." Conflict resolution skills. Although we never want to impede a customer's right to file a civil rights complaint, most issues or conflicts are easily resolved by using the appropriate tools. Conflict resolution consists of useful tools to help identify a solution to a complaint. Consider these valuable skills that can be used in successful conflict resolution. Using a win-win approach is about changing the conflict from an adversarial attack and defense to cooperation. This one attitude shift can completely alter the course of conflict communication. Be creative and turn problems into possibilities. Consciously choose to see what can be done instead of focusing on the problem or issue. Demonstrate empathy to help cultivate feelings of openness and positive rapport between people. It helps others feel that they are understood and shows that you are an active listener. Be appropriately assertive to state your case without making the other person feel defensive. Make it about you by using I statements to show how it makes you feel rather than what the other person should or should not do. Leverage cooperative power to explore the issues and then redirect the discussion to more positive possibilities. Manage emotions internally and externally. It is vital to manage your own emotions and stick strictly to the facts of the complaint. Do not allow the complainant's negative emotions to drive the resolution process. It is all about supporting their real needs without supporting their destructive beliefs and attitudes. Promote a willingness to resolve conflict by identifying barriers to resolution for each person involved in the situation. Unsuccessful resolution. Although conflict resolution entails using many proven tools to assist with the solution of complaints, a successful resolution will not always occur. Once a customer files a civil rights complaint or participates in an investigation, it is unlawful to treat that person differently. Remember, the person and the conflict are not the same. Retaliation is also unacceptable and against the law. Conclusion. This lesson covered compliance reviews, best practices in customer service, and tools and steps for successful conflict resolution. You should now be able to categorize the types of compliance reviews, distinguish customer service best practices, determine the tools and steps